Welcome back to Chris and Retro. Tonight's video is going to be about progress, and it was inspired actually by an interview I did yesterday, a conversation I had with Jen Sugarmeyer. Her episode is going to be dropping on July 6th at 7 o'clock. I'm doing that as kind of a premiere thing in the evening. Great guest, really good conversation. She definitely was thought provoking for me, and I hope you enjoy it for one of our monthly events. Today, I have a guest. You can see the top of her head behind me to help illustrate this point. So, my stepdaughter Skylar is joining us today. And Skylar, you want to show your paper here? All right. So we're going to talk about progress. And right now you can see she's got a blank sheet of paper. And Skylar's going to work on a project while I'm having a little conversation here. And then she'll be back in a second. Sound good? All right. Good. Work on your project here. All right. So in the conversation yesterday, in the interview, we were talking initially about how important progress is. And, I think that all of us go through times. I think it's a pretty reasonable guess that all of us have gone through times when things have been uncertain or overwhelming. There might be, things that you're working on that you have, aspirations for and aren't really even sure how to get going on them or what it's even going to look like, or even, what are appropriate goals. So you get the point. There's a lot of times that we get in these situations when a lot is uncertain. We don't know what our next move is to make. We get stuck. We have limited options. As I stated in the video, as you'll see, we're not prophets. We can't see into the future to give ourselves really any comfort at all that things are going to work out. Jen, one of the things that she'll speak through in this video is, some of her own personal struggles and some of the ways that she got through it. But I would say that for us in our conversation yesterday, and hopefully with you as an audience, that we found that progress is really one of the good observation points to help move beyond bad, troubling seasons or seasons of confusion, or even positive seasons where you're going into a larger project or a new stage of life, and there still can be fear and uncertainty, and progress helps ease those things. And so, even in the recovery community, we're not striving for perfection. We're not striving to know the outcomes. What we're doing is making sure that today we're making progress along spiritual lines, but I think in a lot of cases, the spiritual line and the physical line walk hand in hand. I looked at from 2017-ish, midway through 2017, really up until about 2 years ago, I was hard for me to see really any positive outcome that was going to get life, back, as they say. And honestly, in retrospect, if I look back in that, I probably would have never coached myself to try to get my life back. I would coach myself to just try to get life, and have what new options are open to me. I think that my only view at that point in time was what I had known. And there were some things about my life that were very good and I viewed as successful. And I measured that based on what other people told me I was successful at. And so I viewed that as success if I could get that life back. And I strived very hard for that. But there really wasn't any evidence of it. And if my goal ultimately was to, quote unquote, get my career back, or to have a good relationship, or to have a new home, or any of those things, I'm not sure. I think that would be ill-advised and too lofty of a goal. My career perspective, I'm not sure that I ever wanted to get my career fully back, because I didn't think that was ever possible, but I certainly did want to have opportunities and options. In my recovery work, I created such a mess for myself. And honestly, you want to talk about a dumb criminal. I was that guy. I mean, I could take a sane-minded human being, introduce alcohol to it, and I could introduce to it any number of bad situations that I would then be branded for life, particularly when it comes to driving while intoxicated and things along those lines. I just had reckless abandon. Whatever I would go into, I've told you on the show before, whatever mood or attitude I had going into it, you pour alcohol in me, and that's me times 10. I joke about, if I'm mad, I'm going to fight the whole world. If I'm happy, I'm going to be, Jackie the Joke Man. If I'm in the mood for love, I could, repopulate my city 4 times over. It's like it would just, I was a mess. And seeing how I could ever get from that way of thinking, the destruction that all caused, on the other side in a sober thinking way, how that ever would get beyond those reputation milestones to anything that didn't have that hanging over me all the time, which just seemed impossible. So how do we get there? Well, for me in my journey, I did with what I started making progress, and progress I really think is the way for us to stay motivated and stay moving forward, because progress doesn't necessarily require us to hit the goal. Now, I do believe in declaring your goals. We talk about that in the interview, and you'll see that I 100% believing in declaring what you're going for. State your measurement. Now, that may change. Your end goal might change as you go, but state where you're headed and go for it with everything you got. I believe in that, because otherwise you're just wandering around without it. That's true of sobriety. It's true in business and sports, no matter what it is, in your relationships, all of it. State it, go rigorously for it. In my life, I've written a book. It was a journal guide. It wasn't a great book, but it was progress. It was my first book. It was a try, and it's largely blank. I'm teaching people to journal, and most of those are blank journal pages. But there's some guidance points in there, and showing some of my journal entries to try to help inspire you to journal too. That's one thing. Actually, the book. Which side am I looking here? This side over here. Let me try again. Right there. Anomaly: The Journey is the book I had. That led to working on a second book, that the manuscripts are there. So that's progress. That book is not done. It's in its first draft. It's had feedback, and it's got some work to do. I did a blog called iBlock Chronicles, which led to a podcast called 100 Proof Living, Conversation with a Cop and a Criminal, which led to Chris and Retro. So all these things didn't end up with Chris and Retro, which I very much enjoy, overnight. It was progress. It was taking steps forward and doing the things that were available to me at that time. So if I go back with speaking engagements, who's going to talk to a guy that's fresh out of jail, having driven while intoxicated more than the county could allow? Nobody. I had not a lot of solutions, and I looked like somebody that really was a poor decision maker at the time I was. Regardless of my successes and whoever I was before that, athletic, whatever, the sum total of me was really my performance as an alcoholic at that time. So how do I get beyond that? Progress. And so as a result, I got involved in nonprofits. I started, making myself available to local churches and communities. I started talking to, groups of people working with recovery, one-on-one conversations, all that. Just as more opportunities would present themselves, I would seize those opportunities regardless of what quote unquote benefit it was for me, because it was all progress. All those years later, so that's 2017 till to now, I have a show that I love, and I'm sitting here talking to you. I have a career that literally is back. I'm at the same level I was when things all fell apart. And for me, that's still astonishing. Now, I've created for myself a hole that I don't have the rewards personally that I once did, because, I've got a hole that I got to dig out of, especially at this stage of my life. Nevertheless, it's there because of progress. I have a book that actually is a real book with all kinds of stuff in it that I think is going to be beneficial, that's pending, So these are all things that through progress, it didn't happen overnight. But in those times when I was really ready to give up, or I might be ready to go back to drink, or I might not want to move forward, or I might just feel the weight of all this reputation I'd created for myself: felon, drunk, abusive, volatile, unreliable, all these things. To break through that, those voices still talk to me through it. And the only way I could see that I was moving further and further away is progress. On the show, I've done the phone thing with you where I say, open up your calendar to date one day on the full camera view, and just start swiping left on it to show all the days that for my case, it's a sober date, all the days from that day till now, all those 24-hour periods that I've overcome, that's not worth blowing up anything for any one day ever, because I've taken all that work and all that progress to get here. This is what I mean by progress. And these are the things what I'm talking about, is it isn't always about perfection. It isn't always about, that you've accomplished everything you want overnight. It's that today I know for sure that I'm doing something towards that end goal, and I'll be content when it happens. Now, I've had my partner in crime here, Skylar. She's been working on something for me. She started with a blank piece of paper, and I'm going to call her back in here. Skylar, you ready? Why don't you bring in here what you got, please? Let's see what you got. So Skylar, did you work on the same one? Was it the same thing? Okay. So I'm going to share something with you guys real quick. Skylar has become quite an artist at 6 years old, and I'm coming up on 7. And I have pretty impressed. So this is her page that she draws from all the time. Now I want to show you guys something. I'll go to big screen, but see, this is a page she just left. Now she left with a blank piece of paper, and I didn't know how this was going to turn out. So it's not a setup. I just wanted her to go make progress, do the very best she possibly could do. And I know that she didn't understand my madness here, but we're going to show you. So keep in mind that picture with the cat and the watermelon. And Skylar, you want to show what you've been working on? Let's see what you got. Let's hold it right up here. There's her cat and a watermelon. So that went from a blank piece of paper, and I'll see if you guys can see it when I'll show the other screen. That's her cat and the watermelon. Want to move it over a little bit? Let's move it over. Oops, sorry, this way. Her cat and the watermelon versus that cat and the watermelon in that shorter period of time. Very cool. Nice job. So, thank you. So, my point. Skylar did not get the picture done yet, and she will. I promise she'll go back out probably and fill in all the colors, and it's going to look phenomenal. At some point, the goal is to actually have that picture all done. Oh, wow. All right. So that now it's a watermelon to start. You open up, and there's a cat in the middle of it. All right. It's even more clever than I thought it was. So when she finishes that up, her end goal of having this picture look like that cat and a watermelon will be done. It's just not done yet. And she made progress for it and for her, she can now see her vision unfolding, because between the last time we saw her and now, she's starting to see it take shape because she did something. She didn't just sit back waiting for it to happen. She didn't sit back thinking about what's the perfect way to make the picture. She went out and watched a channel that instructs people how to draw. She sat down on the living room floor with a Sharpie and a white piece of paper and started this picture for you. And I think she's done a pretty good job in a short period of time for sure. So thanks, Guy. Thanks for joining us. So you see my point. Of course, we would want to have this masterpiece done right away. It would be so great. But sometimes you got to put in a little bit of work, and maybe we don't even have the energy, honestly. I mean, there's been times I didn't have the stamina to do all the work, complete the whole picture of my life. I didn't have it yet. I mean, there was no way I was going to have the energy, the resources, or even have met the right people that were going to coach me correctly so that I even could handle it when it got here. So this is where progress is important. Between now and the next time we talk, please look at the areas of your life where you can make progress, and by all means, stay out of trouble.